Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 59. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with the Steelers Nation for this Monday show as the Pittsburgh Steelers are in Cincinnati to take on the Bengals tonight. The 2-win Bengals, Pittsburgh trying to break their 2-game losing streak, and let's hope they do. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy winter to you and everybody.
Longest day of the year, longest year of the year. So hopefully things turn around from here, and hopefully things turn around for the Pittsburgh Steelers, again, playing the Bengals tonight. So we'll try to make this show. We do have a lot to talk about today, Dave, but we'll try to kind of speed through things so people can hear this in time before tonight's game. We will start with, what do you want to start with, maybe the most pressing news here of the report from ESPN's Adam Schefter, although not a surprise to you or I. Ben Roethlisberger intends to return next season and play out his contract. Again, that is probably not a surprise to anyone listening, but it is, I guess, semi-confirmation via Shefty.
Yeah, and it's funny how the major media companies go about really creating manufacturing news, right? I mean,
we got to talk a long time about that.
I mean, this is manufactured news, right? I mean, I suppose this report from Schefter comes out on this Monday morning for several reasons. A, guess who plays Monday night? The Steelers and the Bengals. It's really kind of hard to sell this game overall. Actually, did you know it's Muppet Night Football? Did you know that?
I don't even know what that means.
I didn't either, but evidently the Muppets are going to be kind of featured during Monday night. There's this big push. Yeah, seriously.
Oh,
yeah,
dear God.
Yeah, seriously. Okay. I think you're going to see the Muppets tonight. They've been running advertisements calling it Muppet Night Football.
And the Muppets play running back?
Well,
they're inside linebacker?
They're talking about physicality and all like that. Animal would look great on the offensive line, would he not? But within that, obviously, kind of a tough sell. Even though, look, Steeler fans are going to tune in. I wouldn't be surprised if when the ratings come out of this game later on in the week, that is like the second or third most watched football game this season. It's just what Steelers fans do, right? But within that, you have, I don't know what caused this headline to be released. I think really based what Rothlisberger said after the game against the Bills. Well, if I can't play anymore, I just need to hang it up, yada yada. And then since then, we've had Jason La Canfora write his foolishness a couple of days ago, suggesting that 2020 very well could be Roethlisberger's last season. I've seen other kind of, not necessarily major media, but kind of that second tier radio station kind of, fodder, that kind of stuff, suggesting that Roethlisberger retire. To me, it's never been a question about whether or not Ben will play 2021. Look, I mean, this team enters this game 11-2. Best season in forever. Roethlisberger overall is not having a bad season. Yeah, you'd like to see the yardage and the deep ball up there, but his touchdown to interception ratio is fine. I mean, this team is still poised, like it or not, to make a legitimate run at the Super Bowl there. There's been no sign, even go back to September or right at the start of the season. He says he has every intention of playing out his contract. That's something that he said almost from the moment that he signed his most recent extension. And heck, up until just a couple of weeks ago, there was a lot of buzz that, or a lot of speculation that Roethlisberger will sign an extension in February and March for the sheer fact to help kind of get him under contract a couple more years, and then B, get that 2021 cap hit down. So how we woke up on this Monday morning, and this is kind of a news story of Roethlisberger still intending to play out his contract in 2021 is unbeknownst to me. But it's not a shock. No.
No, it's definitely a story that is much bigger to the national media and the non-Pittsburgh media than it is to local people like you and I. So, we knew that Ben was going to return, barring something unforeseen. Overall, he's played well this season. He said his arm feels good, so provided there weren't any major health-related issues in terms of the arm or a concussion or whatever the case is, Ben's going to be back, and that is certainly the best thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Could something indeed happen that causes all this to go sideways, and then look, I mean, you got to make somebody's got to make a decision on something by the time the start of the new league year in March rolls around, because that's when he's due the $15 million roster bonus, and people I know continue to look at that $40 million plus cap hit that he has in 2021. That's not all earnings, people. That's all, forwarded, stretching out of previous signing bonuses. Rothlisberger is only scheduled to earn $19 million, okay, in 2021. The rest of that $41 million cap hit is previous money, roster or signing bonus money that's been pushed forward here, okay? So don't get it confused. Don't let the narrative, or I already saw somebody comment on the post that I wrote up this morning saying, oh, there's no way Ben's going to walk away from that extra $30 million. There is no, he's already been paid that money, all right? Get it straight that he's due $19 million in 2021. $4 million of that is a base salary. The other $15 million of that is a roster bonus that he's due in March. Within all that, Alex, you and I have talked a lot about the possibility of Rothlisberger signing some sort of an extension, whether it be manufactured, to help with the cap hit or whatever. Do you still think there's a legitimate chance that Rothlisberger signs an extension in February or March?
I do. I don't know exactly how to place those odds, and maybe they've decreased slightly from the peak of the season when Ben was playing at his best, and we were talking MVP possibilities. But I'm not going to be as dismissive of it as I'm sure some of the national media and maybe even some fans might be. If Ben wants to play, the Steelers are going to be happy to have him. I mean, I think that's the approach that they're going to forever take, barring anything extremely drastic, negatively speaking, happening. So Ben is a super competitive guy. If his body feels good, which according to him it does feel good, then I think there's a good chance he wants to keep playing, or at least attempt to keep playing.
This all sets up perfectly for Ben to go out tonight and throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, right? I mean, it's kind of sets up. Now, do we expect that to happen? Probably not, even though it could against this Bengals team that we'll talk about later on in this show. But that would squelch a lot of it probably right out of the chute. But look, I mean, is he going to play for 5 more years? Probably not, right?
Sure.
Can he play for at least 2 or 3 more years? I think that's still within the realm of possibility. Look, has the last 2 weeks been kind to Ben Roethlisberger? I don't know. I guess it depends on how you want to contextualize all of it, right? I mean, he's still, we talked about some of the deep ball stats the other day, and really they're kind of on par. He really hasn't been a consistently great deep ball thrower since 2016, I think, right? But the rest of the stuff's kind of still on par there. Yeah, there's a concerted effort for him to get the ball out quicker than he's ever gotten it out before. But even going back to 2018, there was the sign of that was going to be the kind of play there. So I don't think we've reached a point yet where we're going, oh, I don't know if they're going to extend him just yet, or I'm not sure if 2020 would or should be his final season. I mean, he said several times he wants multiple Lombardis. He intends on playing out his contract, and here we are. I don't think there's any reason to think that he won't, at the very least, play out 2021, and who knows how the rest of the season is going to play out here. And I still will not be shocked at all if we get into February and March and he's signing another 2-year extension. And within that, I've talked several times, I'm not 100% convinced that the Steelers draft a quarterback in 2021. And I don't know where you come in on that topic at this point, but nothing has changed my mind yet.
Yeah, I think obviously to the question of will or won't they draft a quarterback will partially be dependent on their answer of did Ben sign an extension or not. If he did, then you're a lot less likely. If he didn't sign an extension, he's going into the final year of his deal. Not that he couldn't do an extension, but your odds of drafting a quarterback probably would be higher there. To me, there's overall, if Ben wants to return, the Steelers will be more than happy to have him. The only way that Ben does not receive an extension is if he says that 2021 is going to be my final year and I'm going to hang it up after that. If the Steelers can re-sign him, they will, because he is their franchise Hall of Fame quarterback. He is their best option. With him, your Super Bowl window remains open. Without him, you start a whole brave new world, a whole new era.
So how did all this become a story this morning that we're leading off the show with it?
Because it's Adam Schefter, and when he tweets it, it's a headline every time.
But what precipitated that? Do you think just pretty much like I laid it out, coming off 2 weeks where people were questioning his ability, and Steelers back-to-back losses, and this being Monday Night Football and his age and yada yada, right?
Yeah, probably that, and it just could have been something where it was a Monday night game between the Steelers and Bengals. As you said, Shefty wants a story for tonight. He texted a source got back to him. That's the story, something like that. So nothing too crazy.
Where are you on whether or not they do it's a different story, obviously, when it comes to drafting a quarterback. Where are you on them possibly doing it?
I don't think it's overwhelmingly likely right now. But again, it's dependent on if Ben signs an extension or not, and you're going to find that answer out, at least before the draft. And so if they do, those odds really go down. Even if they don't, I don't know if the odds are incredibly high, but I think you just have to gauge where Ben kind of sees himself, and that'll be their roadmap based on how Ben feels and kind of what his plans are for how much longer he's going to be playing for.
All right, that's the Ben Roethlisberger portion of the show.
All right, let's get to the injury report portion.
All right, we got one more kind of national story. The Panthers, what's going on? Why don't you bring everybody up to speed on what's going on with the Carolina Panthers and the potential impact on the Steelers?
Sure. The Carolina Panthers now have a general manager vacancy after firing their GM, Marty Herney, who I think was the former GM and then had come back and have a weird situation there. So the Panthers looking for a new GM. And, of course, given the Steelers' connections in Carolina with the new owner, David Tepper, who used to be part owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know you speculated on Twitter, Dave, and I think it's the right thing to speculate about. Could Tepper and company come calling to Pittsburgh with their potential GM candidates? We know Omar Khan was a pretty popular GM name, although that was about a decade ago. He narrowly lost out to John Schneider for the Seahawks GM job. And, of course, we've talked about Brandon Hunt, who we believe is the heir to Kevin Colbert's throne. But could Carolina come calling for Hunt? That is certainly a possibility.
Can we get in a situation where, where Kevin Colbert just bows out? Obviously it's easy to connect him to Rothlisberger through, however long Rothlisberger stays. But is there a chance that, although I'm sure Tepper wouldn't be afraid to throw out even, top whatever the Steelers' best offer is at Hunt. What is the likelihood, do you think, that they lose either or in the coming months to the Panthers?
I think pretty low. I think pretty low to losing them to anybody. Khan has not been talked in GM circles for a long time, so I think his time has kind of come and gone.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah,
do you think he's still? Do you think he's still viable? Do you think he's still? What is it about him that do you think has led to him not getting? Because you're right. It seems like it's been 10 years now. It's been the old Roethlisberger window is closing.
But I mean, when was the last interview he even had? It has been literal years. I couldn't even tell you. I think not to diminish his role, because he plays a very important role for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but as only a cap guy and without a personnel, scouting, coaching background type thing that I think guys are looking for everything. That's probably the reason why Khan isn't getting too many looks, because he is just the financial side of the guy.
Okay, and I mean, obviously Hunt really hasn't gotten as much attention as we think he probably should have to this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's more of a riser in the organization. Pittsburgh wants to stay internal. He's probably their best option because of all the hats he's worn, the personnel stuff. I mean, I know the Eagles came calling to him pretty aggressively a few years ago. I do remember a report that Tepper said that, and I think this was in reference to either Colbert or maybe the stupid stuff about Tomlin getting fired, but there was some report about how Tepper wouldn't go after Tomlin or Colbert because that would be, kind of a shot, a disrespect to the Rooney family. And so I don't know if you'd go after Brendan Hunt or Khan to try to poach one of those guys and that same idea of you don't want to disrespect, the former group you're a part of. And then also just the fact that Hunt's never been a GM before, and we see so many of these guys that get hired again because they've had past experience and stuff like that. So I don't know if the odds are terribly high, but it wouldn't shock me if Brandon Hunt got an interview or something like that.
All right, so we'll definitely see how that plays out here in the next couple of months. Look, there's going to be a couple of GM openings.
There's
couple
5 now, I think.
A couple of front office openings where a few of those guys. So we'll that'll definitely be a talking point as we get into the next several weeks here. With the season winding down and things of that nature. So something just to be aware of should something happen.
All right, Dave, let's get to the Pittsburgh Steelers injury report that was released on Saturday, one day later, so post our last podcast because of the game being played on Monday night. The Steelers have ruled out Kevin Dotson due to a shoulder injury. That was not a surprise by the end of the week, but Mike Tomlin seemed optimistic early in the week that he was going to play, or at least be able to practice, and that obviously did not happen. James Conner is questionable with a quad, and everyone else is full. That includes Ben, Joe Hayden, who missed the game with a concussion, and Sean Davis, who missed some practice early in the week with an illness. All those guys not given game designations for the Bengals contest. So Conner we'll have to see. Don't know where his status is. And then the question is, who will be this team's left guard? God help us all if it's J.C. Hassenauer.
Well, it's going to be probably one of 3 people, right? It's going to be either J.C. Hassenauer, it's going to be either Derwin Gray, or we'll see what happens with Danny Isidora later today if that roster exemption times out on him and he has to be put on the 53-man roster. Obviously, if that happens, there's got to be a corresponding move of some sort there. Even if he is put on the active roster, he probably hasn't practiced much, if any. It's hard to imagine throwing Danny Isidora right into the fire there, right?
Sure.
So you would think that it would be Hassenauer or Derwin Gray. And correct me if I'm wrong, it'd be obviously Hassenauer has made an NFL start at center, but it'd be his first official one, I think, at guard. Mm-hmm. And same would go for Derwin Gray, right?
Correct, yeah. First start at left guard for either of those guys. Obviously, Hassenauer has played more than Gray. I think Gray has 9 career snaps, played a little bit of left and right guard this season and some late game moments. I would go with Gray. Neither option is great, obviously, but what I saw from Hassenauer in the second half of that game against Buffalo was really poor. He doesn't have the size, the length, the power. He's really kind of a center only in my mind, in Gray at least, former tackle at Maryland, though he's not played a lot of guard, but he got shifted there last year in his rookie season. So Pittsburgh always does better when they have big guards, whether you're talking David DeCastro, Ramon Foster, Matt Filer, obviously former tackle. So just having that size along the interior is probably your best bet. So I'd be willing to roll the dice there and go with Derwin Gray.
We will definitely see, and we haven't had a lot. You know more about Derwin Gray than probably anybody, right? Because of time at training camp and all like that. But even so, we haven't seen him play in the preseason.
In a year, yeah.
And even when he did, there wasn't much, right?
Right. I'm trying to pull up my at least camp report I had on Gray in 2019. This was, without all the preseason in there. I just wrote, definitely a big body in the mold of Foster, strong anchor, hard to get around, creates a push in the run game, got quiet midway through camp. Took almost to week 2 of camp to get work on the second team. Good practice squad material. That's what I wrote back in 2019. So is he going to play lights out? I'm sure not. But I just think he gives you the better option, and he just kind of fits the mold of the offense better. And people could say, well, why didn't he play last week against Buffalo when there were injuries? Well, he was inactive last week, so obviously he could not play. So push comes to shove. If it's Hassenauer versus Gray, give me the chance here with Derwin Gray.
Which way do you bet? We know which way you'd go. Which way do you bet they go?
I really don't know. I mean, you could sit there and say we'll go Hassenauer because he has more experience right now. I don't know. My worry is they'll go Hassenauer, but I really don't have I really don't have a good feel of which direction they go. Obviously, had I been there at practice and if the reporters were able to report on that stuff, you could probably tell. But I'm really 50-50.
Yeah, and it's hard to know how much work Isadora has gotten to this point.
Would he be eligible? Could they? Because they changed that COVID list requirement with the whole 6 days. If you were already, in the testing protocol, could that have changed his status at all midweek?
With he's still riding a roster exemption.
Okay, so wouldn't he be able to practice with the exemption? Or he'd be able to practice.
I think he'd be able to practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the question
would he be able to get in the building earlier, though? Is what I'm asking.
I don't think so. To my knowledge, it's kind of on that Avery Williamson timeline, where there was one extra day to deal with, and that's what allowed Williamson to come off the exemption.
Right, but the league just changed the whole 6 day. He had to wait basically 6 days to get in the building and go through COVID testing and all that. They just changed that to guys that were already on teams and going through testing, that you could basically come in right away. At least that was my understanding of the rule.
Yeah, but didn't that happen midweek here?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, did it change midweek where he missed the first couple of days, but by Wednesday or whatever day that got announced, could he have, then, been able to really practice with the team for the rest of the week and then plus the extra day? That's what I'm asking. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I don't either. We'll definitely find out if he was grandfathered in or not.
Right.
I think,
if he did,
with the thing with this, it changed. Heck, we just finally learned, the elevation rules. It feels like, and some of these things related to the COVID protocols and all like that. Seems like we learn something every week. So with that changing, here's the thing: if the exemption runs out today, and if he's put on the 53, then odds are great that he'll at least be active.
If anything, just to fulfill the requirement to have enough offensive linemen available. Yeah.
Right. Now, because, look, they have only, 7 healthy offense. Kevin Dotson is going to be inactive. He's currently your 8th active guy or 8th offensive lineman on the 53, albeit injured. All right. Because I'm putting him at 8th because he's injured. Okay. So he's not going to be active, and you need 8 offensive linemen active in order to be able to address the 48, 48, right?
Yeah, 48, yeah.
In total. Okay, so if he's inactive, you need somebody to be active. Well, it's either going to be, and we don't know what the move is yet, Coyle being elevated, I think, is really a possibility here in the next several hours. And/or I want to make sure I'm specific with and/or Isadora has the exemption run out today and becomes part of the 53. So,
but if you have to activate Isadora, then you have to make the roster move, as you referenced earlier.
Correct. So that's the one thing. Now look, I don't know if they have a say of how long that exemption lasts. It might just run out today.
Right. They probably don't have a say. It's probably just a deadline. Strict
right.
Deadline.
So we'll find out here real in a couple hours within this podcast inning. So that okay. Even if the exemption runs out and he's on the 53, we don't have a way of knowing how much maybe time he's gotten at practice this week. So that makes it, I think you got to consider him if he's active. Put it to you that way.
Yeah, I mean, it may be truly an Avery Williamson situation where he'll be active and dressed, but only play if he absolutely has to. And at best, he got limited work this week. At worst, he got 0. So I don't think you go in with him as the starter, obviously. You turn to him only if you really, really have to.
Now, if you, just get deep into minutia here, but if, let's say they elevate Coyle and Isadora as part of the 53, then one of those, do you dress all of them? Dress 9, I guess, in total, or one of those guys inactive?
Well, if you're elevating Coyle, you're dressing him. You're not elevating him just to make him inactive.
So there's a chance Isadora would be inactive then.
Yes.
Okay. We'll see. We'll find out here real soon, but that's just sort of the minutia that we're the unknown part of it that we don't know right now, that will get solved by the time we get off this podcast, probably.
And Dave, looking at the Bengals injury report, we have some news there, especially with their quarterback. They will not have Brandon Allen, who had been the backup turned starter with Joe Burrow's season-ending knee injury. So they will now be starting Ryan Finley, kid out of NC State, actually making his fourth career start, his second against Pittsburgh. He had a relatively okay, probably his best performance of his NFL career against Pittsburgh last season, and a relatively close loss to the Steelers. So Ryan Finley will start for the injured Brandon Allen, missing with a knee injury, and linebacker Logan Wilson, a rookie out of Wyoming who had played really well for them this season at 2 interceptions, will also not play due to an ankle injury. But Finley, of course, is the big name to watch here.
Yeah, look, I mean, they're on their third quarterback, right? They're going to be without Logan Wilson. They're not going to have Joe Mixon. They're not going to have Geno Atkins. I mean, this team's been snake bit, as much as any other team in the NFL right now. So there's no reason for this Steelers team to have any kind of struggle with this Bengals team. Finley is a guy that in limited action, he been sacked, 7 times already in limited playing time? I think
like 25 dropbacks. He's been sacked, I think, 7 times. It's one of the highest sack rates in NFL history.
And look, we still don't know who's going to start at the tackle positions for them, but as The Rock would say, it doesn't matter. Because look, I mean, regardless of Bobby Hart, I don't care. The Bills did try to chip and do some things with TJ Watt last week and all, but I mean, if that's going to be the Bengals game plan going into this thing, just making sure that TJ Watt doesn't crush them, then what else are they going to be able to accomplish offensively? Probably not much, so. Yeah, look, I mean, injury report aside, just a quarterback position aside, there's not much of a reason to think that the Bengals will be able to score much more than 10 points in this game, and 10 points might be a stretch.
Yeah, their offense has really gone into the tank without Burrow, as you might expect. They've scored 3 offensive touchdowns in their last 3 games. Over the last 5, I think they're averaging 10 total points per game. So Pittsburgh should dominate this one, but you don't want to assume anything either.
Right. I mean, look, and we'll break this down. There's probably not much to break down when we get to it and all. But all right, well, where are we outside of the injury reports and the possible transactions today?
I think we're actually at the preview portion of today's show, unless I'm missing some sort of news that came across this morning.
Yeah,
am I?
No, I think we're kind of caught up there. Yeah.
All right, so let's predict and more or less preview this game, Dave. And obviously, again, 2-win Bengals team. They've not been playing well. I just rattled off the stats about how they're really struggling minus Joe Burrow. There's been no run game. The receivers, there's some weapons there, though. Tyler Boyd, someone you're going to have to bracket, and certainly will draw a lot of attention on third down, as Pittsburgh did in the first matchup. And I think the game plan here will be similar to the first game, where you want to, bracket Tyler Boyd, take away throws to the middle of the field, and force throws vertical, force throws to the outside on outbreaking routes, where Joe Hayden played a great game in the Bengals in the first matchup. And I think even without Joe Burrow, it's going to be a similar story against Ryan Finley.
Yeah, what did they do on third downs? They shut him out on third downs in the last game, right? 0 for 13.
Right.
Now will they be that dominant again? I think it's a lot to ask to shut out a team on third down, right? I'm not expecting an 0 for again in that area, but I think you can limit it to a 2-13 or a 2-12 or 15 or what have you. They did a number, for the most part. You look at the stats, you see Tyler Boyd 6 for 41 in that game. That's the equivalent of shutting Tyler Boyd down. Right
and
there.
No third down conversions, which is the big number there.
Right.
This is their go-to guy in this moment.
Exactly. Now Higgins, he did bust you for not only the touchdown, kind of on a, kind of a questionable blown coverage, or actually maybe 2 of. The touchdown came on the blown coverage and inside the red zone, and then the long reception also was a blown type coverage situation, miscommunication, if you will. I go into this game making. I want Ryan Finley to beat me with his arm, and I want him to beat me with his arm trying to get the ball to T. Higgins. End of story. If he can do those things, and in addition to dumping the football off to his running backs, and once again Joe Mixon not playing in this game, it's going to be a combination of probably Giovanni Bernard. Samaje Perine, and who's the other young kid that they had? That young kid probably not going to get any carries after fumbling last week, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, they all fumbled last week.
Right.
Bernard and Trayvon Williams both fumbled, and one of those got housed for a touchdown. Yeah, they put the ball on the ground 3 times last week.
Early,
one by
too.
receiver. Yeah, one by Bernard, one by Williams, and all were recovered by Dallas. I think 2 of the 3 came deep in the Cowboys' territory too. So some really costly fumbles at that. I think again the focus here is on the Steelers' outside cornerback play and how they do. They're going to be on islands a lot as they're bracketing and taking away Tyler Boyd in the slot. Again, Hayden did a great job in the first matchup against Auden Tate. But as you said, T. Higgins has really grown his role in this offense. And T. Higgins is a much better receiver on the outside than Auden Tate. So I think the philosophy will be the same, but Hayden probably going to have a tougher matchup against a guy like Higgins that's really finding his rhythm in this offense.
Do you go after? Do you stay with those heavy blitz rates like they did against the Bills? And I mean, it seems that Butler's kind of developing a trait of going after young quarterbacks, right? I mean, we saw it earlier in the year against Dallas, right? And we saw it against Brandon Allen. I mean, do you force Finley to make some decisions to get that ball out?
My expectation is that Butler will blitz heavy. Not that that's something I would necessarily do, but just based on, if you look at the rates, putting Josh Allen aside, every other really bad quarterback he's faced, or at least in the games where he's had a really heavy blitz rate, it's been against lesser quarterbacks, whether you're talking Drew Lock and Jeff Driscoll, Garrett Gilbert, Jake Luton, guys like that. So I do think Butler's going to bring quite a bit of heat and force Finley to make some really hurried throws.
I believe they will as well. And look, you look at that Bengals offensive line. I mean, from left to right. I mean, the Steelers just should overwhelm these guys overall. You know, and especially with the extra days rest. I bet Tuitt's pretty much chomping at the bit after kind of on the stat sheet. Look, he had a couple hurries in that game against the Bills, but it obviously wasn't his best game of the season. Coming on the heels of him playing against he didn't play in the Washington game, did he?
Who's that?
Tuitt. Was that the one he missed with COVID, or was he back for the? Oh no, yeah, he was back for the Washington game. It was the Ravens game that he said that he got on Instagram and said, "Jack up them stats," you know.
Right. They did not, in fact, jack up their
stats. The commentator says, "No."
Narrator.
The narrator. There you go. I'm ruining that, but. Look, there's been the whole narrative this past week about physicality on both sides of football, obviously more so on the offensive side of football. But even without Bud Dupree, we've seen some nice things from Highsmith. It would be nice to see that first kind of breakout game, if you will. From Highsmith, obviously, T.J. Watt should, regardless of the help that they give Bobby Hart on that other side, he's done a good job of wearing Bobby Hart like a hat. This also sets up. Look, I mean, the defensive most player of the year award. I think Watt can take a huge step toward that tonight. With a good game. You look just across the board the rest of the way. Alualu, I think we're probably going to see a lot of base in this, right?
It just depends on their personnel. I mean, they're not a super heavy, they don't use a fullback, and they don't have a lot of help at tight end. So I could see some 11 personnel and just trying to win with their receivers, because it's probably their best position group right now are the receivers. Okay.
Well, and they had a pretty decent, in the second half of that game. The last time these two teams met, the Bengals weren't awful running the football,
Mm-hmm.
Right. Look, I think obviously you want to concentrate on the run and as usual and shut that down early. And, hopefully the Steelers can jump on the Bengals and get them out of any kind of semblance of a run game they hope to establish early in this. But, I mean, player for player, you match this thing up from the Steelers on the defensive side of the ball, they easily outclass this Bengals offense.
Yeah, if you just look at some of the overall big picture stats, the Bengals have been sacked the second most in football this season, only behind the Eagles. The Steelers come into this game with the most sacks in football, far and away. The Bengals are, I think, right near the top of the league in turnovers. They've turned the ball over at least twice in each of the last 5 games. Pittsburgh tied for the NFL lead in takeaways. So you look at just those big picture stats, you better get some sacks, you better get some takeaways and turnovers. You do those things, this game shouldn't be close.
Yeah, it should be. I would expect the Bengals to try to throw outside of the outside of the numbers early on. Try to establish some stuff. That way, they tried to do that in that first meeting, and I think Joe Hayden had a lot to say of that not happening. Didn't he have a couple of key breakups in that? And then I think the Bengals helped him out maybe with a drop or two in there as well too. You don't want, the last thing you want if you're the Bengals is to expect Ryan Finley to stand back there for 3.5 seconds and wait for things to develop down the field.
Honestly, it's not that the Bengals wanted to throw outside the numbers; they just had to because Boyd was bracketed by a safety that would roll down and rob a crosser with the cornerback playing outside leverage to take away any outbreaking route. So you're just forcing those throws. You're forcing more difficult throws. Burrow does not have a great arm, and you're able to make plays on the football. So I think that'll be probably the same strategy that gets employed this time around.
Man, we've gone all this way. We haven't even mentioned A.J. Green. It just goes to show kind of that is a guy that's usually good for one big play a year against the Steelers, right? It just seems like he always finds a way in one of the two games, and I think the last couple seasons he hasn't managed to play in both games. But obviously a crafty veteran. I think he was targeted 5 times in that game last season or in Week 10 against the Steelers. Didn't have a catch. They're going to have to try to get him going early in this game to some degree, I think. And you mentioned possibility of seeing them go on, shorter throws and all like that, go somebody else other than Tyler Boyd. That could be a guy that gets a little bit of targets early in this game.
Yeah, Green's coming off a decent game against the Cowboys last week, scored a touchdown. End of the half, he just got peppered with targets. They had him as the X receiver backside, and they threw 3 targets to him, and there was a slant to Faith, and I think another slant for a touchdown. So I think Finley will look to those moments of being able to just isolate one-on-one, have a clean, at least, read on the play. So, yeah, Green's not a big playmaker, but get him backside one-on-one with his size, you miss a tackle, it could be a problem.
Absolutely. Is there any aspect of this offense that scares you right now, Bengals offense?
The only thing that really worries me is, if you want to force throws to the outside, does T. Higgins make more plays than, say, an A.J. Green or an Auden Tate? I believe that he's capable of that. And so that would be the worry. Just can you be as strong on your islands on the outside, talking about Joe Higgins and Steven Nelson as you were in the first matchup? That's going to be required. Can you do it again? I think it's at least a tougher task this time around.
A tougher task for them.
For Pittsburgh, yeah, just because I think T. Higgins is a better outside threat. You should still win that matchup, but I think it's a little bit tougher whenever T. Higgins is making those plays than a Tate or a Green or whoever else they had in the first matchup.
The biggest thing, and it goes with every NFL game anyway. And it's the only reason kind of that the game was sort of kind of close there towards the end of the second quarter. The last time these two teams met, the Steelers didn't necessarily jump on the Bengals. Yeah, they got off to a 6-0 lead, right? Two field goals by the Steelers in that first game, and then they finally got the touchdown, I think, midway through the second quarter there. But then they gave up the big play, and then let the Bengals kind of hang around with that touchdown there. Don't give up the chunk play. End of the story. Don't give up that third and 13 that this team has done. This defense has done throughout the season here. Don't give up that 50-something yard blown coverage. If you don't do those little things like that, you're going to be just fine in this game because this is not going to be a Bengals team that goes. At least I don't think it is that drives the field 3 times in 14 plays on you.
Right, yeah. I think if you force them to nickel and dime their way, then that's the approach to take, and very low odds that Finley and company is going to be able to beat you. So flipping over to the Bengals defense, not much different from the first time around. I think they're a little healthier in the back end. They had a ton of injuries in that first game in Pittsburgh, really went after Brown and some of those cornerbacks that were backups and practice squad guys who got elevated. But their run defense has not been good. Their pass rush has been poor. They don't take the football away a ton. They do have a good safety tandem with Jesse Bates and Von Bell. But really, you should be able to stay on schedule versus this defense and win in situational football.
Absolutely. Look, once again, it goes back to offensive side of football to talk about the physicality, yada, yada. Be nice to be talking about having some run game success in this one, right?
It would be, but unfortunately, we said that the last matchup against the Bengals, and it didn't work. So I'm not assuming it this time, but I'm pleading for it more than assuming it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Once again, look, if you can't. This has been an ongoing thing with this team for several weeks now, and it really, with them being depleted up front and all, it really makes you wonder if they can't get it going tonight, when can they get it going here? So, and look, they might have to do it without James Conner. He's obviously questionable with a quadricep problem going into this one too. So obviously, if he's not dressed, you're looking at Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels, and Anthony McFarland in this thing. So not having it's not having James Conner a great thing? Probably not, but. We'll see. Just show the physicality. The last thing that we should be talking about, I think, in this game, regardless of the outcome of the run game, is, boy, they just weren't physical enough up front.
Mm-hmm. And you got to work through those linebackers against the Bills. I thought the biggest issue with the lack of a run game was just guys not getting off their combo blocks at the first level, linebackers running free, facing the 4-3 Bengals team, so it can be tougher because you're dealing with 4 guys up front as opposed to just 3, so it can be harder to be able to secure that first level block, and then a center or guard pull off to the second level and climb. Certainly, whenever you have potentially Hassenauer or Gray at left guard, that's going to make things even tougher. So I'm not assuming or guaranteeing anything about this run game, but I certainly hope. I mean, without Connor, if he's not there, then just give the ball to Benny Snell, let him get downhill, push the pile forward. That might be your best approach at this point.
And once again, I'm not asking for them to run 45 times, in this game. I want to see the success rates early be good, and then at the end of the game, hopefully in the fourth quarter, most of the fourth quarter, if you have a nice lead, you're able to do one of those grinded out kind of games where Ben's not having to drop. The last thing you want again in this game is for Ben to have to drop back 41 times, right? I mean, that's stupid to have to rely on that against the team, against the Bengals, like the Bengals here. So, hopefully this thing's kind of put to bed. One of the keys I have, 5 keys in this game, is to actually jump on them even more than they did last time. And I know kind of, what was it? They missed an extra point, I think, too. So it was like 12-0 at some point in the second quarter of that last meeting. Yeah, that's sort of kind of jumping on them, but in reality, the way that game had gone, it should have been like 21-0, right?
Right.
At that point. So the sooner you jump on these guys, and the sooner you're able to run the ball better or better earlier in this game, the more it sets up for you to just spend half of that to do to the Bengals what the Bills effectively did in the final 7 minutes of that game Sunday night, which is just, you're not getting the ball back the final 7 minutes of the game in the story, and even with Mason Rudolph under quarterback, just handing off, and we've seen this before too, and at the end of Bengals games in the past. And no, you can't rely on past history or any of that, but remember, there was a time where you ran that power, and it was like the U.S. It was like Herb Brooks of the U.S. hockey team again, because they just couldn't stop it.
Right.
That's the kind of situation that you hope to get yourself into Monday night.
Yeah, and this season they've not been able to run power at all. So it's been a big difference. But I agree that that's certainly got to be the aim and the goal for this team. As Tomlin said, they do have some weapons in the secondary. Jesse Bates dropped a pick 6. That could have potentially changed the comfort level of that game, at least in the first matchup. Von Bell, a very good box safety. I think again they're a little healthier at corner this time than they were last time around. So I think in the secondary it'll be a little bit more difficult this time around.
Look, it's hard to put lipstick on this thing. Maybe that's why ESPN's coming out with that Rothlisberger report here. But any given Sunday, right? This is the 14th consecutive trap game that the Steelers will face this year. Anything? If we learned anything in Week 15. Any given Sunday or Monday, right? I mean, you see what the Jets. What's the report? That is the biggest upset in the last decade, I think. As far as point spreads or something go.
I saw a tweet, and I think I read it correctly, that said something like that was the biggest upset since the Joe Namath guarantee game, Super Bowl III over the Colts. I'm not 100% sure if I read that correctly, but that's what I thought it said.
Let's
So, like,
see.
historic level of upsets.
Buddy R.J. Bell here in Vegas, who I follow for years. Great content if you enjoy being a degenerate as I do. Jets' ninth NFL upset by an underdog bigger than 2 TDs going back 32 seasons. 9 wins, 141 losses. 8 of 9 big upsets week 10 or later. Well, what else? What else did he have to write here? Biggest NFL upset in over 25 years. Jets plus 17 win outright. He earlier in the afternoon he wrote, Jets winning would be the biggest NFL upset in over 25 years. Underdogs plus 17 points or more have lost 28 straight games. Talking about the underdogs. Last winner was Washington plus 17.5 over Dallas on December 3rd, 1985. And then he goes on to say the biggest NFL upsets the last 25 years. 2018 Bills plus 16.5 over the Vikings. 2019 Dolphins plus 16 over the Patriots, and in 2009 the Raiders plus 14.5 over the Steelers there. Now I don't know about the whole Namath thing. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, this was actually, I found the tweet. This was the largest upset, the second largest upset in Jets history. The only larger upset was Super Bowl III. So for Jets history, the second biggest upset in franchise history.
Okay. And obviously regular season, it is the biggest one, right?
Right. Yeah, regular season.
For the Jets.
One. Right. For the Jets specifically. Yeah. So, yeah, you don't want to see any.
Can you imagine?
Oh, don't even speak that.
Can you imagine had that been... I mean, look, Sean McVay's a great coach. I think Sean McVay's a great coach. And there's old Wonder Boy. You remember the whole thing going back to the Super... he was the next big thing, right? He was going to have the Rams in the Super Bowl every year, that seemed to be the talk. And then we saw what happened. They kind of backslid last season and all. And here they are kind of trending in the right direction. I even said on the podcast, boy, you want to talk about putting a big foot in the mouth there. I think I even said on the when we were going through the game saying this is the best defense in the NFL right now, right? And then you go out and you let the Jets do that to you. Can you imagine what the narrative would be in Pittsburgh right now had that been the Steelers?
Or if they lose tonight.
Or if they lose tonight.
Will be. That's where I thought you were going. Yeah, I mean the chaos that would bring to have a 3-game losing streak, to have that third one against a lowly Bengals team for sure. And to be fair, the Bengals played the Browns tough in both their matchups this year. They were both 1-score games. Now, granted, that was with Joe Burrow, so different context there. But AFC North games on the road, Bengals, looking for some sort of happy moment of their season. Again, I don't want to assume anything here.
But listen to the Bengals would be even worse. At least the Jets have been in. Look, they should have beat the Raiders a couple weeks ago, right? And they do have Sam Darnold is their current franchise quarterback, if you will, for now at least. It's what's the more fathomable upset in week 15? Jets over the Rams, or the Bengals and Ryan Finley over the Steelers?
I still think that Jets beating the Rams is a tougher loss for the Rams than would be hypothetically if the Bengals beat the Steelers, just because it's AFC North play, so divisional play is always tighter, and the Jets didn't have a win this year, and the Bengals at least had 2. So I don't know. Both would be terrible. Well, let's hope we don't have to try to compare after tonight.
Well, God forbid it would be. It would go. I don't even want to try to bring it up, but where would it rank as far as all-time bad losses for Mike Tomlin?
It'd be up there with those Raiders ones you just mentioned.
Yeah,
not fun.
Yeah, it would.
One of those Ryan Mallett kind of games where you lose to those random quarterbacks.
Right. Look, we talked about it. I think this last week. There is no really great outcome in this game for the Steelers outside of 52-3. Right?
Yeah, I get it. I get the narrative whole aspect, but I don't care about the narrative. I just want to win. I just want to get
I'm just saying, but that's going to be the stuff that we're talking about if they win 33-17. It'll be, why didn't they win 53-13? You're expected to demolish teams like this in this type of situation. Steelers team coming off back-to-back losses, a team that was undefeated for a greater part of the season, a team that's had their manhood questioned this past week with the whole physicality. Quarterback needs to go ahead and retire, yada, yada, yada. The expectation is that they go into this game and actually absolutely destroy the Bengals, and anything other than whatever a defined destroying the opponent is will not be acceptable, period.
Sure. No, I get that, but I don't care. That's all noise to me. I just want to get the victory, hopefully fairly comfortably, and just try to get back to your winning ways. And you'll have a tough team against the Colts next week. That'll certainly be a really, really big test.
On a shortish kind of week, too. Yeah. Here's the other aspect, and we've talked about it. If you'll go back to the game against the Cowboys and the Jaguars, expect the unexpected.
Right. Yeah. The biggest area for the Bengals that concerns me are the special teams. Obviously, they ran that fake punt late in the first matchup. They got a couple of good return guys, and Brandon Wilson, who does kicks, who had a kick return for a touchdown a couple weeks ago. Alex Erickson does punts. He's always been good against Pittsburgh. So their best offense is probably their return game right now. And Pittsburgh did not do well last week versus Buffalo and Andre Roberts, who consistently gave the Bills good field position. So make sure that those guys aren't making impact plays on special teams.
Do we see, hopefully they get in a situation maybe in the fourth quarter where they can do it, but is there any chance that Mike Tomlin gives a nice little payback to Zach Taylor? Some sort of throwing on third down up. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying, look, the old, I remember you running that fake in that last game. Are we going to see some semblance that on Wednesday morning you and I are saying, Mike Tomlin got him back?
Let's just hope they're in a situation to get the Bengals back where they're up 31.
You're all in protective mode, aren't you?
I am. I'm ruled by fear. I'm always concerned and worried about the worst case scenario. So I don't want to assume anything. I just because we've been down that road before, and the Steelers typically do not win comfortably. So you always have to remember that.
All right.
What's the other point I was going to make? I've just lost what I was going to say.
They're going to be either tied or trailing at halftime, aren't they?
God, I hope not. I mean, obviously on paper they're the much better team. They should be able to take the football away, get sacks, get pressure, get turnovers. I mean, you should win comfortably, but again, we'll roll the ball out there, as Tomlin says, and also to your point about winning big or winning small. A win gives you the AFC North, correct? So that's absolutely, you do that, you check that box, and I don't care how you do that by 1, by 40, you get the win, you get the North locked up, and that is kind of your first step. And when the team outlines, their goals every single year, it's obviously win a Super Bowl, but the first goal is win the North, win your division, take care of business there, and that is hopefully a box that can be checked tonight.
Yeah, all that said, though, if they do all that, if it's not 50-something or 40-something to 3, they're people are going to be have to be pulled down from the bridges, I think, still.
All right, Dave, that should wrap up our preview for the Bengals game. Quickly here before we get to some reader emails, Week 15, any impressions? The Chiefs, I don't know how anyone's going to beat the Chiefs. I mean, even whenever teams play well and they get pressure and they seem to do things well against Kansas City, Mahomes and company always finds ways to win. And so, I mean, obviously they were just, they're tier 1, everyone else is tier 2 and below.
Look, it's tough, and if there's one team that maybe gave you a semblance of a blueprint to it, it was the Saints, right? I mean, Hendrickson over there on the side went all James Harrison on Fisher over there. Their offensive line is not great. Oh, what about the people gripping about Stephon Wisniewski and the loss of him right now? What would you say to those people saying, see, the Steelers shouldn't have let Stephon Wisniewski go?
Yeah, he did not play well in that game. I know you had a fun time tweeting that one out every bad rep that he had, and there were a lot of them. I think Steeler fans have an attachment to some. Yeah, it's very weird. A lot of fans will give up on Ben, but they love Derek Watt and Stephon Wisniewski, and it's just like, I'm not really seeing that.
Yeah, I forgot to look at what Wisniewski's grade was in that game here. I will do that right now. According to PFF, 63.1 overall grade for Wisniewski in that game. Believe it or not, he was the second highest rated offensive lineman for them in that game, which really isn't saying much because that offensive line was horrible, I thought, in that game for the most part. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, I would. He did catch that past us. Maybe that bumped his grade up a little
Well,
bit.
that ended up being illegal
I
touching
know, illegal
on
touching,
him.
right. He's trying to sell it well with the whole tip. He was smart about that. Yeah, I get, obviously, would it be nice to at least have Wisniewski, a veteran guy, in the mix right now? I guess. But whenever they released him, obviously you're not anticipating all these injuries. And listen, he did not play well in the opener. I would honestly rather have Derwin Gray over Wisniewski right now.
He gave up a couple of pressures in that game. It's just, I don't see all the consternation that people are having over this right now. I mean,
Same.
Yeah, I guess it'd be nice to have him for this game, maybe. But look, his best days are far behind him, and he's more of a liability to the Chiefs that they have to use him moving forward. And one interesting development with the Chiefs anyway in that game, not only is the offensive line, susceptible to whatever. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, going to be interesting to see what the report is on him. He sure seemed to struggle to get back to that locker room there. And Le'Veon Bell, his best days are behind him, I think, and he got kind of dinged up at the end of that game as well too. But I think it goes back to what you kind of stated there. If a team like the Saints can't beat them, being able to get pressure and all on the Chiefs, who can?
Right, yeah. It says the Saints team that played well overall. I know they were slow out of the gates, but the Chiefs gift them 2 points with that crazy kick return at the end of the first half that rolls into the end zone, gets knocked out. So it's just tough. And yeah, I know the Chiefs, obviously without Edwards-Helaire, could be a loss, but they barely had a run game all season. I mean, they were able to win games without any semblance of a run game. It's like the Patriots, where Brady could throw it 50 times, they run the ball for 30 yards, they still find ways to win. So it's just a tough team, because even when you play your best and they don't play their best, they still find ways to win because they got Patrick Mahomes.
Right, because they have Patrick Mahomes, and look, I mean, there's obviously three key cogs in that offense. There, it's obviously Mahomes first and foremost, and then Tyreek Hill just adds another level of speed and athleticism, and just the things that you can do with that guy inside the red zone, and then Travis Kelce. You can attach him to the line and use him as a traditional tight end that way, or you can spread him out and use him as a wide receiver there on top of it. So those three players alone are what makes the Chiefs the odds-on favorite.
For sure. To look at the AFC North in Week 15, you had Baltimore blow out a bad Jaguars team. The Browns had a little bit of issue with the Giants early, but ultimately won that game comfortably. And obviously the Steelers and Bengals will play tonight. So the Browns, had they lost that game, the Steelers would have locked up the North. But because Cleveland won, the Steelers will have to beat the Bengals tonight to lock up the AFC North title.
Just to be clear to everybody gets this so wrong right now. Had the Chiefs lost to the Saints, it still really wasn't good enough. I mean, you're still going to need, it didn't happen, so let's move past that. So what do the Steelers need in order for the Chiefs to take over the number one spot? Plain and simple, it comes down to the fact that the Steelers will probably need to win out, or do need to win out, and then the Chiefs need to lose to the Chargers in Week 17. End of the story. Right. Regardless, really, of what the Chiefs do against the Falcons, because that's a conference game, it just doesn't matter. Almost like it didn't matter what happened. Obviously, you root for the Saints because that adds another layer. I think if a tie came into play against Atlanta at that point, or obviously a back-to-back losses to the Saints or the Falcons, that came into play there. But long and short of it, technically, that Chiefs win against the Saints really didn't mean jack squat,
Right, and what the Chiefs do against the Falcons means even less, right?
Right, now, right.
Yeah, right after the win. Yeah.
Right, so within that, it comes down to what happens between the Chargers and the Chiefs, and can the Steelers win out on top of that there? Now, let's suppose this seems to be a growing aspect of this. Let's suppose the Steelers beat the Bengals and then beat the Colts next week there, and then go into Week 17. They'll obviously still have, I don't know what percent chance you want to put on it. 1, 2% chance of winning the number one seed should the Chiefs somehow falter to the Chargers. Now, look, Chargers got a decent young quarterback there, and didn't the Chargers give the Chiefs a little bit what they wanted in that first meeting between the two teams? I guess what I'm getting at is people are saying, well, the Steelers should just rest their starters in Week 17. What would you say to those people?
Well, I posed this question last week. I said it will be interesting to see what the team's approach would be if the scenario you just laid out, where the Steelers could still get the one seed, but it would require beating the Browns and the Chiefs losing to the Chargers. And you're right, the Chiefs beat the Chargers in overtime 23-20 back in week 2. So the question would be, how much faith do you have in the Chargers to beat the Chiefs, and how do you rest based off of that? And I'm not quite sure which direction Tomlin would go. I think there's good arguments for and against in this scenario. Go ahead.
Look, any given Sunday, right? Even though it is the Chiefs, you would think that. Look, logic tells you no way in hell do the Chiefs lose to the Chargers.
Yeah, the odds are low in that scenario. They're possible though, and so that's where you're battling. That they're possible, and if you set your starters and the Chiefs lose to the Chargers, and you're saying, man, we should have done that. Right
now, is the first round bye worth the potential for the first round bye? Now, obviously, you could scoreboard watch throughout that thing, and if the Chiefs jump out to a big lead, you call it off at that point there. Now, people will say, well, remember what happened in 2016? Well, in 2016 in that finale, weren't the Steelers locked into the third spot, period?
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
In 2016, I think the Steelers were locked into the third playoff spot. All right,
okay.
Period. We'll see.
It's multifold, and we can talk about it more if the scenario comes up. But obviously, if you want the one seed to get a rest, to get your starters a week off, but you could also get a week off by just resting heading into the Browns game, and just by giving those guys a week off that way. So you're guaranteeing your rest in that sense, or you're banking on hoping to get rest, which are low odds if you play your guys and you hope that A, you beat Cleveland, and then B, the Chiefs lose to the Chargers. So you can guarantee yourself rest by just sitting your guys. But, of course, the other benefits of the one seed is home field throughout. You wouldn't have to go to KC, hypothetically. You only need 2 playoff wins to get to a Super Bowl instead. So there obviously are other benefits to being the one seed other than that first round bye and that first week of rest. So that's where you're really weighing that more, as opposed to rest now or rest if you get the one seed.
How funny would it be? Look, even the way things played out so far this week is Baltimore is still technically outside the playoff picture, even though their odds of making the playoffs are great, right? But if Miami wins, and I guess what I'm getting at is theoretically it could come down to a situation where the Ravens are rooting for the Steelers to beat the Browns in Week 17.
Right. Yeah, I haven't run all the scenarios, but I guess that's possible.
And then technically, if you lost to the Browns, depending on what if you were okay with not getting the number one seed, you could potentially keep the Ravens out of the playoffs.
We'll see. It's going to be an interesting finish to the year.
All right. Anyway, we'll see how that. Look, just win Monday night. We'll talk about the rest of it from there.
All right. So I'll moot if you don't beat the Bengals. All right, Dave. Let's finish out today's show with some reader emails. So actually, we didn't predict this game. I'm sorry, I haven't even predicted this one.
Right. What do you got?
All right. I'm going to go with you, a bit of an oddball score here. Again, despite all my reservations and all my hesitations, I've definitely expressed on this podcast. I have the Steelers winning this one, 27-11. I think the Bengals get some weird, 2-point conversion / field goal, kind of thing here, where it's like 27-3. They get a touchdown late. They're trying to make it a 16-point game, so they go for 2 and score. But 27-11, just too much talent for Pittsburgh. Get back on track. Full week of rest. All positive things for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I have a blowout. I have Ben having a good game, 300 yards, maybe 2 or 3 touchdowns in this game. I think they're able to run the ball for a change. They just wear them down, to the nub in this game. I think I have this one 38-10.
Ooh, so very similar to the first score, which is 36-10. All right, hoping so. hoping you're right. All right, Dave, let's get to some emails now and close out today's show.
All right, Charles Munger writes in, guys. Charles wants to do an off-season purge. He says, with the extra day until Steelers football, I took some time to look at the age of the roster. I think could play the alarm for the purge this offseason in Pittsburgh. He goes on to write, I argue the following guys should be cut in an attempt to sign a 24-year-old Juju or some younger free agents, i.e. Sutton or Hilton. He has recommended cuts: Pouncey, Ebron, McDonald, Vince Williams, and Joe Hayden.
Yeah, that is quite a purge. I mean, again, obviously some of this will be based on where the cap is at, and some of these guys are going to be cut just to get yourself closer to cap compliance, let alone trying to re-sign any of these guys. So we have to be worried about unintended consequences of cutting guys and how you're going to replace those guys too. If you're cutting Pouncey and you're losing Filer and you're losing Villanueva and to cash for another year older, then what does your O-line look like in 2021?
If Ben Roethlisberger plays in 2021, he's not going to. Pouncey's going to play too.
Yeah. Pouncey's not getting cut. The Castro's not getting cut. Those things are not happening this offseason.
Now, as far as him having Ebron and McDonald on this list and Vince Williams, that's all fathomable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
I mean, we've already entertained the talk of that, and Joe Hayden to some degree. I don't think. Would you bet that house you just bought on it?
No, I would not. I think Joe Hayden will be a Steeler next season.
No, what I'm saying, what is the likelihood that he isn't?
I think it's low. I think it's low odds that he's playing somewhere else.
Right. Is it totally unthinkable to think that he could be part of a purge?
It's not zero, but he's playing pretty well this year. He's a leader in that room, and Steelers just don't go around cutting, guys like Joe Hayden to sign someone like Cam Sutton. I mean, it's just not the way they do business. So right. I just don't see it.
And Vince Williams?
I think Vince is possible, and I think it would kill the team to do that. And maybe Devin Bush working his way back from injury, maybe changes that slightly. But Spillane has played well. If they cut Vince, it's not going to be because they want to. It's going to be because they feel like they have to because of the cap situation. But I'm really hoping it doesn't happen.
Right. Now, once again, we'll review the names that he has on this list: Pouncey, Ebron, McDonald, Williams, and Hayden. Ebron, McDonald, and Williams, I think, are in the realm of possibility. At least one of those three is going to be gone, and you could see all three of them gone. Pouncey and Hayden, I'm with Alex. I don't see that happening, Charles.
Yeah. So there you go.
Let's move on to Brett Nile writes in, we had a lot of discussion about the impending free agent class that has changed over the course of the season, and for several of those players for the worse. I know there are still some that are going to get paid. Hilton, for example. My question is, which of the following has lost the most money this year compared to what they would have gotten if they had a good or average year, and how much have they lost? Oh, Lord. Matt Filer, he has Bud Dupree, obviously, with the injury. Without that, I think he easily gets $20 million a year. Look, the long and short with Bud Dupree is, yes, he has lost money with this injury. The question is how much, and I don't think he's lost enough to put him in the realm of being back with the Steelers. So within that, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't think he's coming back. I do think the odds of him returning were higher post-injury, but only because the odds of him returning pre-injury were zero. He was not going to come back because of the money that you pointed out he was going to command. In terms of the guys that have lost the most value, I mean, Filer, I thought would have a better season, so he probably hasn't. Not that he was, going to be making $40 million, but he's probably going to, hurt himself a little bit had he had a much better year at guard. Everyone else, though, I think, is basically held or increased their value.
He has Matt Filer, number 2 on his list, stating that good starting right tackle in 2019 versus average or below average guard in 2020 could go from Hubbard to Finney type of contract. All it takes is one. That's the thing when it comes to Filer. Has Filer played good enough to warrant, let's say, at least a $5 or $6 million a year contract from somebody?
Yeah, probably not. I think his assessment's good. I like his comparison of the Hubbard to Finney contract.
So in other words, you're looking at maybe $3 million per year for Filer.
Yeah, again, don't hold me to a number here, but that sounds in the right range.
Chances Filer is back in 2021 as you sit here right now.
Lower than what I initially thought, but maybe still higher than where you're going to come in because his market's not going to be that expensive, and he's versatile. He can play guard, play tackle. I'll say 40 to 45%.
Wow, that high, huh?
Yeah, I know you're going a lot lower than I am.
I'd go about 25% chance that Filer's back. James Conner's the next guy on his list. Unless James Conner wants to sign for the minimum or damn near close to it. It just, I don't. How much did his value drop? Period. I mean, what was his value going into the season? It's not like it was high anyway.
Yeah, I guess the comparison of had he had a really good season, would his value gone up more, and how much is he losing because he's not? I mean, he's still having not a terrible season. It's just the line's been a mess, run blocking. But yeah, his return in Pittsburgh is very unlikely.
If he misses this game because of a quad injury again, there's a whole durability thing once again, yada yada. So I mean, I wouldn't. I understand why he's on the list, but I wouldn't lose any sleep if you hadn't put him on the list, Brett. Juju is number 4 on the list. He says 2 years in a row where he's not putting up number 1 receiver numbers. In fact, looks to some, quote, not Steelers Depot, more like number 3 this year behind Johnson and Claypool. Long and simple, and I've said this all year, Juju's value is what the Rams' 2 wide receivers are, $16 million a season. I don't see where it comes in any less than that, and I don't think it's. I believe that at the start of the year, and I don't believe it's any less than that right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think if you're Pittsburgh, though, would you pay that? And I say that in the sense of his role's been extremely valuable as a third down, safety valve, check down option for Ben. But if you're going to pay him that money, hypothetically, you got to have him run longer routes. I mean, you can't have a guy averaging 9 yards a catch getting $16 million per year, even knowing how valuable some of the plays he's making is. You just can't pay that kind of guy, that kind of money to really just be a running back route tree.
Okay. Is his worth still $16 million now?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think on an open market. And I think for Pittsburgh, that's probably what it would require to sign him. But if you do, then you better start using his route tree a little differently to get your return on investment.
All right, I just don't see, unless something happens in these final few games, I still that's where I've been with Juju the whole time. Now, whether or not he returns, look, I laid out that example contract several weeks ago on Twitter and all like that. It depends on the cap, man. Can you shoehorn in let's say a $6.5 million cap hit in 2021 on Juju if the right things happen during the offseason and you cut the right people and you extend the right people? Yeah. It's remotely possible that, but once again, it's going to be a deal around $16 million per year with a first year cap hit of between probably $6 and $7 million.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
All right, let's move forward here and try to find some other emails here. Josh, no, we already got that one. He says, Matt Mahoney says he solved the Steelers offense. I don't know if we hit on this the other night. I loved your article on deep pass effectiveness. In my opinion, it really points to the fact that the deep passing game isn't the offense's biggest priority right now. Here's my fan theory. The Steelers are supplementing a non-existent run game with the short pass game. This has only become an issue in the past 3 or 4 games because, 1, teams have caught on and are now jumping routes, and 2, the receivers Ebron and the drop, or I guess that's calling Deontay Johnson the new name, the drop, are dropping easy passes. The Steelers' plan to supplement the run game has failed. Instead of forcing the ball down the field, the offense should incorporate more jet sweeps, reverses, and play action fakes to open up the passing lanes. A more efficient run game will follow once we get defenses moving side to side and on their heels. Unfortunately, they will probably make these adjustments against the Bengals, thus tipping their hand to the Colts. If it were up to me, I'd continue to play the wounded animal card for one more game and then spring a new offense against the Colts. Ha, Matt, pronounced Matt.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do something different because you keep doing the same thing and the results continue to be the same, which is not good enough right now. So, I mean, I'm really for any ideas to try to open up this run game, especially if you have some injuries there to try to do something conceptually to make up for the lack of personnel and the injuries you have at left guard and potentially at running back, depending on Connor's situation. I don't know if I'm hiding stuff, for the Bengals to spring it on the Colts. I just want to find stuff that works and build off of that throughout the rest of the season.
I don't think. I mean, at this point in the season, I mean, how much extra were you able to add in this week? Per se.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Obviously, they did have a full week and kind of brought you some normalcy, but you're not going to do anything brand new. But the jet sweeps and stuff wouldn't be brand new to this offense either.
No, you're not going to have sweeping changes, right?
Right. Sure.
I mean, you just teams aren't able to do that. I mean, might there be a wrinkle or two? Possibly. Maybe that's what he's trying to convey here. Maybe a new wrinkle or two that he wished would maybe be held back for the Colts here. But anyway, we'll see. Look, the biggest thing right now, where we stand right now today, is obviously you go into you want to see this offense to whatever degree get back on track against the Bengals, and this team to not only win, but win rather convincingly. But let's not lose track of the overall goal here is just to come away with a win and secure the AFC North.
Yep, exactly.
All right, I think we've got most of them knocked out here, and we want to try to make this podcast a little bit shorter here because it is game day here. Alex and I'll be back on Wednesday to recap everything. Any closing thoughts here, Alex?
Nope, that's it. Yeah, be back Wednesday, hopefully talking about a Steelers win and go from there.
All right, so within that, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. You can follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of Steelers Depot, go hit the ad-free button, upper right navigational bar on SteelersDepot.com for $25 for one calendar year. You can have an ad-free version of the site that's been fairly popular along the way as well too. Alex and I will be back on Wednesday, hopefully recapping the Steelers win, recapping the Steelers being AFC North champs, starting to take a look ahead at the Colts game in Week 16 as well. So within that, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.